What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. Here today we are talking about electronic shifting, who needs it, why you want it, and is it really worth the price? All kinds of situations are going to be talked about, like you run out of battery on the trail, you run out of battery doing something, you forget to charge it, how easy it is to charge it, what's better for my situation, does it work on all bikes? We'll be right back to that after this intro. Okay guys, let's break it down and get into electronic shifting, why or why not you might need it, and the differences between at least two of the systems. Now, let's get into the why you need it portion. Now, electronic shifting is great. It's very low maintenance. You don't have to worry about cable stretch, fine cable tension adjustments, cable glide through housing, any of that nonsense. So you have a little bit less maintenance on it. You also have much crisper shifting because you know every time the cable is pulled, since there's no stretch, no added factors, that motor and that derailleur moves it however many millimeters that pulley wheel needs to shift, and it stays there. It's incredibly stiff. You can't move it by hand. There's no futzing with it. Once it's micro adjusted, it is set, you forget it, you're good to go. Life is great. Downside, you have to keep the system charged. Now, it's not like you have to charge it, every 200 miles, something like that. Generally, I charge my wireless bikes every 3 to 6 months, depending on how often I use them, how much I'm shifting, what kind of riding I'm doing. With SRAM, it's really easy. You just take the batteries off the derailleurs, take them inside, put them on your little charger. Life's good. With Shimano, you kind of have to bring the whole bike close to an outlet. You have about 6 feet without an extension cord from where you can plug the bike into where it charges, and that can be a little bit tricky for some people to figure out, but it's not impossible. Still pretty easy to charge, unless you have an external Shimano battery, and then you can pop it off, put it on a charger just like that. But most Shimano systems have moved internal. Now a lot of people will come to me and be like, well Tom, electronic shifting is really expensive. How do I afford that? And I don't think of it as much as it's an more expensive system than other systems. I would consider it more of an upfront cost than other systems. Now, because it costs a little bit more upfront, that can turn people off because sometimes they have money over time. It's worth saving for, in my opinion. You don't have to change cables. You don't have to change housing. You don't have to worry about your cable tension things when you're riding. Once it's set up, it's set up. Life's good. Why would you want to go away from that? Now, if you think about your time you spent tinkering with your derailleurs, if you've ever been on a ride and have a cable break or jam up, it can all be problematic. Now, with electronic shifting, you also pay a mechanic for a lot less maintenance if you're somebody who takes the bike to a shop. A tune-up, which might include derailleur adjustments, I would say a tune-up which is mostly derailleur adjustments and wheel truing, is now just wheel truing, which makes it a lot cheaper and generally quicker and easier for a mechanic to do. If I just have to pull off your wheels and true your wheels versus adjust your derailleurs, adjust your shifting, adjust your cable tension, all of that, it's a lot quicker for me to get it done and bring it back to you. Now, it's not to say I don't enjoy doing more work, but you might enjoy getting your bike back sooner, and you also might enjoy not paying as much on a mechanic. Yeah, you've already paid them up front, so I guess it's kind of a wash. But each time you bring it in, you're not like, man, I just spent a lot of money on this bike and I gotta spend more each time. It's like, oh, it's kind of saving me money in a way, working itself out. Especially with systems like SRAM Rival and SRAM GX Eagle Access coming out. With the new third tier instead of just the standard top two, you save a lot more money, you lose a little bit of features. Like I know on the Rival shift levers, you don't have the ports for blips or multi-clicks or any of that. So if you're planning to run, satellite shifters, you just can't with Rival. But I feel like as somebody who runs satellite shifters, it's not a make it or break it feature for me, and probably isn't a make or break it feature for most of you. So with that said, no biggie. Like, oh, no satellite shifters? Oh no, the shift levers feel great in your hands. Everything else feels just as good. They're just made with not as lightweight materials. You might not get the carbon fiber brake lever. The buttons might feel a little bit bulkier, but you know, some people like that feel. It's a lot more tactile, a lot easier to grab. There's rumors of Shimano coming out with 105, which will also drop the pricing down on their new DI2, and that's great too. So now that we've covered like costs and why you might need it, let's break down the difference between those two systems, and you might be able to kind of feel out which one you need better. So for starters, I'm just gonna be upfront here. I'm only gonna cover Shimano DI2 and SRAM Etap systems. I don't have hands-on experience with Campy's EPS systems, and I feel like I just wanna cover stock wireless systems, so we're gonna leave out the Archer Components trail system that pulls a mechanical cable from down on your seat stay or your chain stay from a wireless shifter. I have heard good things about it. It's kind of cool. You can, you know, have an 11-speed shifter and put a 12-speed cassette on it and micro adjust all of the movements you need so it works smoothly. That's cool too. I just don't have any hands-on experience with it, so I don't want to speak of it at all or speak to it from a mechanical standpoint and reliability standpoint. With that said, let's get into the electronic shifting systems. Blech, words are tough. And I'll explain to you my general thoughts on them. So now we're just talking Shimano and SRAM. With SRAM, you have a full wireless ecosystem, which is great. If you have any frame, you know the wireless system is gonna work easily with no added kinks or any different setups. You just bolt them on, you're good to go. It's also really nice, the batteries are attached individually to the derailleurs so that you don't have to worry about bringing your bike inside to charge it or having an outlet by where you store your bike to charge it. They also have a really good ecosystem on their electronic shifting on their mountain bike, and they made the ecosystem speak to each other so that you can have a mountain bike rear derailleur with road shifters for you wide range gravel people and you general one by people. I run both, so I don't really fall into a category. I think they both have their pros and cons. Anyway, back to that. And that's also, you know, a great benefit of SRAM. With Shimano, their newest systems that just came out that we'll see, you know, in a year or two with supply chain, is a semi-wireless or a wireless cockpit system. So you have levers like on the Etap, there's no wires going into the frame, gives you a really nice clean handlebar setup. You just see two hoses coming out of it. And then there is a wireless system link that I believe is in a junction box or in the battery. Can't remember exactly. I haven't done my modules on it yet, so I'm not 100% able to speak to where it is. But there's a wireless module somewhere. The battery has a few ports. Everything's connected from there. Inside the frame is where all of the ecosystem lives. And then standard 11-speed DI2, which you're going to see a lot more often. That's a lot more common. There's a junction box either under the stem, in the handlebar, or if for certain manufacturers they made an in-frame junction box. Sits generally on the down tube where everything's plugged into. You'll have a cable connecting the two shifters, or the shifters will connect to a junction box. It's kind of a make it work for you Lego type system compared to SRAM, because you have to figure out how you're going to wire things together, where you're going to place your junction boxes. On top of the cockpit junction box, which generally houses your charging port, you'll generally have an in-frame junction box, which will split and then connect your front and your rear derailleur and your battery all together, or your battery and rear derailleur, and give you shorter segments so that if you need to like replace something, you can replace shorter segments. You don't have to rewire your whole frame, you can just pull from junction boxes. Those systems are great because you run one battery, charges to a junction box, everything is kind of housed inside the frame. Somebody can't like come take your battery off and steal it, which I've heard of, and it's why when I park my bike in the city, I take my batteries off when I lock it up somewhere, because I just don't want to lose a battery. They're expensive, they're hard to find right now. But that can cause some issues with frame compatibility. Most of the times it's set up for internally wired frames that also have room for junction boxes, and you need a seat post that is compatible to hold a battery. It's not impossible to do externally. They make junction boxes that kind of like bolt into where the cable guide would be in the bottom bracket shell, and external battery mounts that like bolt in below a water bottle cage, and you have an external battery, and all the wires they sell these little battery covers for. That's great too. Downside is you have to bring your bike inside if you want to charge it, because your junction box is where it is. At least on the internal battery, the external one, the charger, battery comes off, plugs into the charger, so you can leave your bike in your garage, wherever. That might not be the closest place to your outlet. And yeah, so that's kind of the two systems. It's kind of why you need it. Let's now talk about like how you shouldn't use it. Now, a lot of people are moving to electronic shifting on their e-bikes, especially if you run a Shimano system. It just makes sense to run a DI2 system off of it, because you already have DI2 wires on your bike, so you might as well add more into your shifting. One major downside to that setup with, I would say, more novice riders and just unfamiliar riders, I should say, is they realize they can shift more under load, because instead of the chain fighting the cable and the cable stretching and resisting, you press that button and that derailleur moves. So charging up a hill, you need to shift up, you just click the button, it makes a horrible grinding, crunching sound, but it achieves the shift. Now that's great, it can do it, but it can't do it constantly. Shimano's new 12-speed mountain bike range has specific ramps for shifting under load. Chain is set up in a certain way to do it, and it's still only so much load it can handle. You start factoring in the power of an e-bike with electronic shifting, and you're going to be bending teeth or breaking teeth on your cassette. You're going to be snapping your derailleur cage, which is the little pulleys that keep your chain tension good. You're going to be, I've seen bent derailleur hangers from it, because the pressure of everything pulls the hanger in instead of shifting the derailleur smoothly, just because it's under so much power. And you're going to see broken chains. Nobody likes either of those things, especially midway through the ride. Another downside is I've heard of people running out of charge on the ride. It's happened to me multiple times. One time I drove to drop my car off with my partner, went to go ride on my bike home from there, shifted once and was told I was out of battery. Now I had a flat, easy ride, and I was in an easy enough gear that I just rode home as a single speed. If you're on a bike tour, that could be really bad. Now, if you're running a SRAM system and you're on a bike tour, you can generally carry extra batteries and just swap them out. If you're running DI2, you're kind of SOL, but if you're riding with somebody else who has DI2 and say you're not in a gear you really like, you can plug one of the wires from their system into your bike, into whatever derailleur you want to shift, and use their bike to shift it. It will generally work in all situations unless one of you hasn't fully updated your ecosystem, in which case you'll have to do an update first. That's a little bit more complicated than we need to get into now. But yeah, those two things are really the only major cons to electronic shifting, besides price. But as we talked about earlier, that price is trickling down. There are more and more group sets and component groups that are getting cheaper and cheaper with electronic technology. It's only a matter of time before, Claris and Tiagra start having electronic options, and everybody's going to love that. If you have any questions that I haven't answered, go ahead and leave them below. I'll try and respond to every question possible. If you like what I'm doing, please like and subscribe to these videos. It really helps me know that you guys are watching, you guys are listening. Like YouTube tells me, oh, you have more views, but I really want to know that you're enjoying this. So if you give me that subscribe, that lets me know. Other than that, I'll see you guys on the next video. If you have any ideas of what you want to hear about, drop them in the comments below too, and I'll try and make a video about it. Other than that, yeah, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.